At 65, I found myself staring at my only son's wedding invitation, my name crossed out in bold, angry black marker. It was a moment I never anticipated. For months, Thomas had been exacting his revenge on me for my refusal to sell my home to finance his lavish wedding to Vanessa. Unbeknownst to him, on the very morning he was to wed her, I would get a phone call that would alter the course of our lives forever. A call that would uncover the agonizing truth he had concealed from all. Before we dive back in, share with us your location, and if this narrative resonates with you, ensure you're subscribed, as I have something truly special lined up for you tomorrow. The invitation rested on my kitchen table, a stunning piece of cream-colored cardstock adorned with gold embossing, heralding the upcoming spring wedding of Thomas and Vanessa at Oak Ridge Estate. When it came 3 months ago, I proudly showcased it on my refrigerator, tracing my fingers over the graceful lettering each morning as I prepared my tea. Now it was marred, my name brutally erased, accompanied by Thomas's scrawled message. "Since you've opted not to back our future, we've determined you shouldn't be here for its inception." 3 decades of memories enveloped me in this humble bungalow on Maple Street. The yellow curtains that James had hung continued to frame the window above the sink, though the sunlight had dulled their vibrancy over the years. Through that window, I could see the garden my late husband had begun. Azaleas in full bloom now, their vibrant colors a striking contrast to the weight in my heart. I had nurtured that garden by myself for 12 years, since the heart attack that claimed James far too early. Thomas was our extraordinary blessing, arriving after 7 years of treatments and numerous heartaches. After years of saving, James and I finally purchased this house, aiming to create a nurturing environment for our child to flourish. I recalled the moment when Thomas took his first steps in the living room, his small hands clutching the coffee table that James had skillfully made from reclaimed oak. The kitchen was alive with laughter during those weekend pancake breakfasts, flour dusting our faces, as James showed Thomas the art of flipping the perfect pancake. The backyard retained the ghostly remnants of chalk lines, remnants of Thomas's architectural visions. In his teenage years, his initial designs were imprinted on the concrete patio, a space where James had fostered his imaginative spirit. Following James's passing when Thomas was 24, I took on double shifts as a nurse at Mercy Hospital to guarantee that Thomas could finish his master's degree in architecture free from the burden of student loans. The years passed in a haze of fatigue, returning home at the stroke of midnight, catching a few hours of sleep, and then waking before the sun for the early shift. Witnessing Thomas graduate at the pinnacle of his class rendered every sacrifice meaningful. His initial project, a modest library renovation, was captured in a photograph that still graces my hallway. Thomas and I, arms around one another, his expression radiant with pride and potential. When did that appreciative, tender-hearted young man become someone capable of treating his mother with such cold indifference? I came to understand that the transformation had occurred slowly over time. As Thomas's architecture firm achieved greater success, he began to navigate more and more elite social circles. His attire grew increasingly luxurious, his preferences more sophisticated, and his trips back home dwindled. 3 years ago, at the age of 36, he encountered Vanessa at a charity gala where he was recognized for his design of a new wing at the City Art Museum. Vanessa Bradford hailed from a lineage of wealth, her family name gracing the facades of numerous buildings throughout the city. By the age of 32, she had already ascended to partner at a renowned marketing firm, focusing on luxury brands and upscale real estate. She exuded a refinement that heightened my awareness of my utilitarian attire and the weathered appearance of my hands, which told the story of years spent in labor. "Mother," Thomas had remarked during their initial visit to my home, the formal address instantly putting me on edge. "Vanessa and I have some thrilling news to share." They revealed their engagement during a cozy tea gathering in my living room, Vanessa's diamond ring sparkling as she offered her hand for my admiration. The stone was massive, flaunting a grandeur that felt contradictory to the principles I believed I had imparted to Thomas. "It's delightful," I remarked, referring to the engagement rather than the ring. "I'm thrilled for you both." A fleeting look of disappointment flickered across Vanessa's face, as though she had anticipated a more enthusiastic response to the jewelry. That ought to have been my initial clue. For months, our relationship evolved in a friendly yet somewhat detached manner. I found myself at elegant engagement parties, feeling distinctly out of place among Vanessa's friends, adorned in their designer attire and sharing rehearsed laughter. In these environments, Thomas appeared transformed, exhibiting a more subdued demeanor around me while displaying a heightened desire to win over Vanessa's parents and their social acquaintances. The turning moment arrived 6 months back during dinner at Le Chateau, a restaurant so pricey that I had to tap into my limited savings just to cover the cost of the meal. They had requested champagne prior to unveiling their shocking revelation. "We have successfully secured Oak Ridge Estate." During the ceremony, Vanessa revealed, displaying images of perfectly tended gardens and an elegant ballroom on her phone. It was the venue for my parents' 30th anniversary celebration. The typical waiting period is around 2 years, but my father managed to use his influence to expedite the process. "How delightful," I remarked, truly pleased for their enthusiasm, even as a knot tightened in my stomach, while they elaborated on their plans for a 5-course dinner for 300 guests, bespoke floral arrangements, and a celebrated string quartet. "Mom," Thomas had said, his voice adopting a familiar tone that signaled he was after something important. "The situation is that, considering the deposit for Oak Ridge, the honeymoon villa in Bali, and the down payment we're setting aside for the penthouse in Riverside Towers, what Thomas is subtly hinting at," Vanessa interjected, grasping my hand with her impeccably manicured fingers, "is that we require your assistance to ensure this unfolds correctly. In this market, your home is likely valued at a minimum of $450,000. By selling it, you could enjoy a comfortable life at Sunny Pines Senior Living, all while assisting us in beginning our married life on the right foot." The assumption left me momentarily speechless. They had already looked into the value of my home? "You chose a retirement facility without consulting me?" "I'm not parting with my home." I finally succeeded in pulling my hand away from Vanessa's. "This is the place where James and I created our life together, where Thomas was raised. My neighbors feel like family to me." Thomas's expression shifted into a steely resolve that was entirely unfamiliar to me. "This is precisely why I hesitated to approach her," he remarked to Vanessa, as though I wasn't present at all. "She has consistently held firm about the house, despite it being clear that managing it alone is overwhelming for her." "Manage it perfectly well," I replied, my voice growing tense as memories of the garden I nurtured each day flooded my mind, along with the small fixes I had taught myself to tackle after James passed away. "I'm not prepared for a retirement community just yet." "It's not a home. It's a community," Vanessa corrected, her smile failing to illuminate her eyes. "Surrounded by engaging activities and peers, you'd find far greater joy in that vibrant environment than in the solitude of that old bungalow." The ensuing dialogue lingers in my memory, evoking a familiar ache in my chest whenever I think back on it. Thomas charged me with being self-centered, clinging to the past while jeopardizing his future. Vanessa implied that my hesitation indicated a lack of genuine concern for Thomas's well-being or his position within her family's social hierarchy. "Either you assist us in beginning our lives the right way," Thomas finally asserted, "or don't anticipate being a part of that life. It's up to you, Mom." They departed suddenly after that, abandoning me to cover the outrageous bill by myself. For weeks I endeavored to bridge the gap, reaching out through calls and texts, even showing up at Thomas's office, only to be met with the regretful shake of a receptionist's head. 3 weeks ago, the defaced invitation arrived, solidifying the exclusion. That evening, as I settled into my porch swing, the sunset transformed the sky into a canvas of pink and orange. It was then that I faced a challenging choice. Regardless of the circumstances, I would be present at the wedding. Not to draw attention, but merely to observe my only child's wedding, even if from afar. I would remain still at the back, cherishing the bond in my heart for the son I had nurtured and continued to love without reservation. Mrs. Peterson waved from next door while walking her corgi, exclaiming, "What a beautiful evening, Eleanor." Her genuine kindness almost moved me to tears. This was where I belonged, my sanctuary. The idea of being torn away to support Thomas and Vanessa's lavish lifestyle filled me with a fresh wave of sorrow. As night enveloped the neighborhood, I had no inkling that the dawn of Thomas's wedding would usher in a phone call that would dismantle everything I believed about my son's relationship and the woman he was about to marry. The week leading up to Thomas's wedding slipped by in a haze of tumultuous feelings. Every morning I rose to the familiar emptiness in my chest, the truth of my isolation striking me once more. I would automatically grab my phone, wishing to see a message from Thomas. Maybe an apology, a change of heart, any indication that he had eased his stance. Yet the screen persisted in its unyielding emptiness. I meandered through the house during those days, my fingers brushing against items that linked me to my son's childhood, the height markings on the kitchen door frame chronicling his growth. From age 3 to 16, the slightly askew bookshelf he and James constructed for his 10th birthday, the framed certificate from his inaugural architectural competition victory in high school. Every keepsake narrated the tale of a boy, cherished profoundly and without reservation, a narrative that felt more and more detached from the man who had erased my name from his wedding invitation. On Wednesday, I made my way to the attic, a place I seldom explored since James's departure. Dust motes twirled in the faint glow seeping through the tiny window, while I cautiously maneuvered around boxes marked with James's meticulous script. Festive adornments, Thomas's academic creations, cherished family snapshots from the 1980s. I found myself on a quest for a particular item, one that had eluded my attention for many years. The cedar chest nestled in the corner stood as a wedding gift from James's parents. I sank to my knees, the hardwood floor pushing back against me, and raised the creaking lid. The comforting aroma of cedar and lavender sachet surrounded me as I gently parted the layers of cherished memories. My wedding dress, now tinged with the passage of time, James's military service medals, and the baby blankets I couldn't bring myself to let go of after Thomas outgrew them. At the bottom rested what I had been searching for, a small leather journal with a weathered spine. James began documenting his reflections on the day we discovered I was expecting Thomas, capturing his feelings about becoming a father and his aspirations for our child's future. After James passed away, I had put it in the cedar chest, finding it too painful to read yet too precious to throw away. With care, I brought it downstairs to the sunroom that James had crafted as a delightful surprise for my 50th birthday, finding my place in the wicker chair where the afternoon light formed an ideal reading nook. With trembling fingers, I open the journal, the familiar handwriting of James, evoking tears in my eyes instantly. April 15th, 1983. We are expecting a child. Following countless letdowns, it feels almost surreal. The physician indicated that all appears well. At 3 months. Eleanor's pallor was striking during the appointment, her grip on my hand tight as if she feared she might drift away if she released it. I'm filled with both fear and excitement simultaneously. What type of dad will I become? Father was often aloof, perpetually judgmental. I desire to stand out. I desire for our child to experience a deep sense of security in our love, to understand that they are truly enough, just as they are. I flipped through the pages with care, following James's transformation from a nervous, expectant father to a dedicated dad, his pride in Thomas shining through in each entry. On the morning of December 8th, 1983, at precisely 3:42, Thomas James Sullivan made his entrance into the world. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of sheer brilliance. This love is unlike anything I've ever experienced. I cradled him close. This little being we brought into existence and vowed to give him everything the world has to offer. On June 30th, 1987, Tommy constructed an extraordinary tower using his blocks. Despite his mounting frustration with its constant failures, he persevered, experimenting with various methods, until he finally discovered a solution that succeeded. Eleanor thinks I'm overanalyzing a toddler's play, but I truly believe there's something remarkable about the way his mind operates, how he perceives structure in space. September 5th, 1991, the beginning of my second-grade adventure. Tommy felt a flutter of anxiety, yet he made an effort to mask it. It brings back memories of my own experiences at that age, vulnerable yet resolute in concealing that vulnerability from others. I want to ensure he understands that it's perfectly fine to experience emotions profoundly, and that being vulnerable does not equate to being weak. Eleanor excels at bringing him out of his shell more than I do. She has an uncanny ability to ask the most insightful questions. The entries flowed steadily during Thomas's childhood and adolescence, encapsulating moments of victory and hardship. James's steadfast affection serves as a constant testament to our son's growth. The concluding entries were crafted in James's final months, as he was aware that his time was drawing to a close. On November 16, 2011, Tommy proudly graduated with honors. The architectural models he created stood out as the centerpiece of the exhibition. I felt incredibly weak and almost didn't make it, but I'm thankful I persevered. The joy on Eleanor's face as she watched our son is a memory I wish to carry with me when the moment arrives. She gave up so much for him, particularly over the last 2 years while I was unwell. I have concerns for both of them once I'm no longer here. Tommy is so intent on leaving his legacy that he occasionally overlooks what really matters. I trust that he will come to understand eventually that the steadfast encouragement from his mother holds greater value than any professional success. On December 3rd, 2011, I requested Tommy to take care of Eleanor in my absence. With tears glistening in his eyes, he made a promise. At his essence, he possesses goodness, yet his ambition surpasses anything Eleanor or I have ever experienced. I worry that his drive could steer him towards valuing the wrong things, seeking validation from the wrong individuals. I've attempted to convey to him that genuine richness is not quantified by money, but by love, by community, and by leading a life of integrity. I can only wish that those lessons have truly embedded themselves. As I shut the journal, the evening light had dimmed, and the tears on my cheeks had long since dried. James had witnessed everything: Thomas's sensitivity, intelligence, and ambition, but also the darker aspects. his vulnerability to external validation, and his yearning to fit in with those he looked up to. The roots of the conflict we confronted had been evident even back then, recognized by a father whose insights remained clear, unlike the unwavering affection that occasionally clouded my judgment as a mother. The next day I went to see Beatrice, my dearest friend since our time in nursing school. At 70, she possessed a straightforwardness shaped by years in emergency medicine and a depth of understanding I had leaned on since James's passing. Her cozy apartment was filled with cherished keepsakes from her adventures. She had never entered into marriage, opting instead to dedicate a significant portion of her career to working with Doctors Without Borders. The aroma of chai tea enveloped her kitchen, while she absorbed my intentions to go to the wedding, even though I had been left out. "Do you really think that's a good idea, Ellie?" she inquired, worry clear in her muted azure gaze. Thomas and his companion could certainly create quite a spectacle for all to see. "I must be there," I conveyed, cradling the warm mug in my hands, merely to observe, without causing any disturbance. He is my sole offspring, Bea. How could I possibly miss his wedding day, even if he believes he doesn't want me there? Beatrice regarded me intently for an extended period. With a sigh, she finally remarked that you've always possessed more grace than wisdom. If you're set on leaving, allow me the chance to take you. You shouldn't have to go through this by yourself. Her offer stirred a wave of emotion, causing tears to well up in my eyes. "Thank you," I murmured. "That would signify the world." "What will you choose to wear?" she inquired with a sense of practicality, approaching her overstuffed closet. "It's essential to present yourself with an air of elegance while maintaining a sense of subtlety. Nothing that shouts distant mother of the groom." We dedicated the afternoon to sifting through our shared wardrobes, ultimately choosing a dove-gray dress adorned with a delicate silver thread interlaced within the fabric. It possessed a refined quality that was not ostentatious, maintaining a sense of dignity without veering into dullness. Beatrice lent me a stunning vintage pearl necklace to perfect the outfit. "There," she said, as I stood before her full-length mirror. "You embody everything you truly are, a person of depth and compassion who merits far more than what has been offered to you." The eve of the wedding found me tossing and turning, sleep eluding me. A spring storm swept in after midnight, thunder shaking the windows, mirroring the chaos within me. As the first light of dawn broke, the rain had subsided, revealing a world refreshed and imbued with a delightful scent. I awoke at dawn, observing the sunrise from the garden bench where James and I had enjoyed countless morning coffees together. I questioned whether I was making the right choice, my voice barely a whisper, as though he might somehow hear me. Yet, the mere idea of not being present is unbearable, even if Thomas remains unaware of my arrival. I chose my outfit with care, applied a subtle touch of makeup to mask the dark circles under my eyes, and secured Beatrice's pearls around my neck. At exactly 8:30 a.m., I heard the sound of her car entering the driveway. The ceremony was scheduled for 11 hour, but Oak Ridge Estate was located on the far side of the city, and we aimed to get there early enough to blend into the back row without drawing attention. I cast a final glance at my cherished abode before grabbing my handbag. A small wrapped package rested on the entry table, a wedding gift for Thomas and Vanessa, one I never anticipated being able to deliver. Inside was an antique silver compass, once owned by James's grandfather, representing the quest for one's true path in life. Within I had placed a card bearing a heartfelt message. "May you always find your way home. With affection, Mom." As my fingers brushed against the doorknob, the phone suddenly rang. I paused, casting a quick look at the clock. Beatrice sat in anticipation. It was imperative that we departed. The phone rang persistently, demanding attention. An inexplicable instinct urged me to respond, a force I couldn't quite articulate. "Greetings." I spoke, anticipating the voice of a telemarketer or a misdialed call. The voice that replied was feminine, unknown, and unmistakably troubled. Could this be Eleanor Sullivan, who is the mother of Thomas Sullivan? Indeed, I responded with care. "May I ask who's on the line, please? I am Rebecca Martin, although we haven't crossed paths before." Her voice faltered, resembling a choked sob. "I believe there's important information regarding your son's wedding that you should be aware of. Concerning Vanessa, I'm not sure who else to reach out to." Completed. Through the window, I noticed Beatrice glancing at her watch, prepared to take me to a wedding that unexpectedly seemed even more intricate than it had just moments ago. With a soft tone, I settled into the chair next to the phone table, ready to hear what Rebecca had to say. Her words slowly dismantled all my assumptions about my son's relationship and the woman he was set to marry in just under 3 hours. "I'm Vanessa's former roommate," Rebecca said, her voice quivering just a bit. "For 2 years we lived together, in an apartment before she crossed paths with Thomas. We seemed to share a bond, or so I believed until—" She hesitated, as if summoning her bravery. I signaled through the window to Beatrice, who nodded and reclined in her car seat, grasping from my gesture that we would be held up for a while. "Until what point?" I encouraged softly. "Until I uncovered her true nature," Rebecca went on. "Mrs. Sullivan, I have a question for you to consider first. Did Thomas or Vanessa request that you sell your home to contribute to their wedding expenses?" The question struck, resonating with an undeniable force. How is it possible that this outsider is aware of our personal family dispute? "Indeed," I confessed, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "Really?" Rebecca's harsh laugh carried no trace of amusement. "That is her pattern. I felt it was necessary to reach out to you. You are not the first, Mrs. Sullivan. Vanessa has experience with this." My grip on the receiver grew firmer. "What have you accomplished, precisely?" Rebecca stated matter-of-factly that Vanessa Bradford has been engaged 3 times in the last 7 years. She consistently focused on men who came from successful professional backgrounds, yet lacked substantial family wealth, specifically those whose parents possessed property or had retirement savings. Every time she crafted a situation that compelled the parents to sell off assets to finance a lavish wedding, I settled further into the chair, thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance. "Are you suggesting that she might be a fraud? She's strategic," Rebecca clarified. "The initial moment I considered it mere chance. Michael's parents decided to sell their vacation cabin to fund a wedding at the St. Regis. The engagement concluded in an enigmatic fashion just 2 weeks prior to the ceremony, following the payment of non-refundable deposits and the sale of the parents' property. On the second occasion, I struggled to find the words to ask. Daniel's mother secured a reverse mortgage on her home to finance their Plaza Hotel wedding. Another tale unfolds, with the engagement called off right before the ceremony. Yet not before Vanessa gained access to multiple accounts they had established together. Rebecca hesitated for a moment before proceeding. In both instances, she departed with significant sums of money and presents, while the families were left reeling from financial and emotional turmoil. My heart raced intensely, its rhythm echoing in my temples. If this is indeed the case, what accounts for the lack of reports about her? File a complaint? Complex emotions intertwine, creating a tapestry of pride and embarrassment, all wrapped in legal intricacies. She never really took anything that wasn't hers. The men granted her access without hesitation. The parents willingly sold their properties or took out loans, while Vanessa consistently orchestrates scenarios that cast her as the victim when she terminates the engagements. Thoughts race through my mind about Thomas's unwavering support for Vanessa every time I voiced even the slightest concerns about his growing distance from his old friends since their relationship started. How Vanessa had quietly steered their social interactions solely toward her own circle. "What makes you so knowledgeable about this?" I inquired, a hint of doubt lacing my tone, even though her words resonated with sincerity. "Because I assisted her once," Rebecca confessed, embarrassment clear in her voice. With Daniel, the second fiancé, I confirmed a narrative she constructed regarding his alleged inappropriate relationship with a colleague. I knew it wasn't true, yet I supported her because she had me believing he had done her wrong. Eventually, I uncovered proof that she had orchestrated everything from the beginning, including text messages discussing the specific targeting of his mother's house. "Why are you sharing this with me now, on this particular day of all days?" Last night she called me, intoxicated and giggling about how she had successfully created a rift between you and Thomas, claiming she had persuaded him that you were selfish and unsupportive. Rebecca's voice trembled. She remarked, and I quote, "Just another nostalgic old soul who will likely spend her final days in a care facility while I relish in her converted assets." The harshness of the words took my breath away. I shut my eyes, fragments aligning perfectly. Vanessa's keen attention to my home, her cultivated empathy while addressing my circumstances, and her understated reinforcement of Thomas's less admirable inclinations toward ambition and materialism. "Realize I should have spoken up earlier," Rebecca went on, "but she has a talent for instilling fear in others. She holds a grudge when wronged." Once I confronted her regarding Daniel, she began circulating rumors that ultimately led to my termination from work. I found myself relocating to a new city, embarking on a fresh beginning. What's the point of reaching out to me at this moment? I cannot bear the thought of allowing it to occur once more. Last night's call pushed me over the edge. The manner in which she spoke of you, of Thomas. She paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. "There is additional information, Mrs. Sullivan. There's an aspect of financial difficulty that Thomas remains unaware of." Beatrice stepped out of her car, worry etched across her features as she made her way to the front door. I gestured for her to come in, my thoughts swirling around me. "What financial difficulties?" I inquired. 3 months have passed since Vanessa lost her job. She has been feigning her daily commute. Yet the truth is, she was let go for manipulating client invoices. She finds herself ensnared in a web of financial turmoil, burdened by credit card debt, a compulsive shopping habit, and the lure of gambling. She requires Thomas's earnings and additional financial resources. The equity in your home could address many of her challenges. The doorbell chimed, and Beatrice inserted her key to gain entry. She discovered me in the entryway, my face ashen, the phone gripped tightly in my trembling hand. "Ellie, is something bothering you?" she murmured, observing my astonished face. "Mrs. Sullivan, are you still present?" Rebecca inquired over the phone. Indeed, I succeeded. "Is there any evidence to support this?" Thomas is skeptical and requires proof to be convinced. He is deeply enamored with her. As I spoke those words, a question lingered in my mind. Was what Thomas experienced truly love? Or had he, like so many others, been drawn into a mere imitation of it? I possess screenshots of text exchanges, duplicates of the earlier wedding agreements, images of the properties sold by her other fiancé's parents, and a recording of the call from last night. She hesitated, After the incident with Daniel, I began to document our conversations for my own safety. The clock caught my eye, reading 9:45 a.m. The ceremony was set to take place at 11. Please send these to me right away, via email. Completed. I dispatched all items to the address provided in the alumni directory from your nursing school. I trust it's up to date. I verified the address, then posed the question that burdened my heart the most. What is the reason for focusing on Thomas? Why is it my son in particular? Rebecca's sigh echoed with the weight of unfulfilled dreams. Vanessa meticulously investigates potential targets. She seeks out men who have achieved professional success, yet are not independently affluent. Individuals who share a strong bond with their parents, particularly when those parents possess property without any financial encumbrances. Individuals who may feel a touch of social uncertainty, keen to make a favorable impression. I apologize. It can be observed that some men may experience a sense of distance from one parent, which creates an opportunity for her to take advantage of that vulnerability. The portrayal matched Thomas with excruciating precision. Following James's passing, Thomas immersed himself in his career, channeling his sorrow into achieving professional milestones. His social circle had diminished as he dedicated himself to his profession. Despite our closeness, a certain distance lingered between us, shaped by his guilt over his absence during his father's illness and his unease with my more modest way of living, as his preferences became increasingly lavish. It has been 12 years since Thomas lost his father, I remarked gently. He faced considerable challenges. I sincerely apologize, Mrs. Sullivan, for all that has transpired. Rebecca appeared truly regretful. I ought to have voiced my thoughts earlier. I found myself responding, astonished by the calmness in my tone. That is what truly counts. Once I had made plans to keep in touch, I ended the call and turned to see a perplexed Beatrice staring back at me. I shared my insights in brief, clear statements. My God, Beatrice breathed when I finished. What will your next move be? I looked at the clock once more. It was almost 10 to 1 now. First, review my email, and then make your decision. My old desktop computer seemed to take forever to boot up. Upon finally accessing my email, I found Rebecca's message patiently awaiting me, complete with several attachments. Beatrice and I nestled close, poring over incriminating text messages, financial records, and images of properties that had truly been sold to fund weddings that never took place. The audio file was particularly unsettling. Vanessa's voice, though slurred, was clear as she laughed about her manipulation of Thomas and her schemes regarding my house proceeds. The nonchalant harshness with which she spoke about my son, labeling him as easily controlled and conveniently distanced from his mother, made me feel nauseous. We must deliver this to Thomas, Beatrice insisted with urgency. At this moment, just before he takes the most significant misstep of his existence. I nodded, collecting the sheets I had quickly printed. Yet, he refuses to answer my calls. My number has been blocked by him. Beatrice pondered this for a moment. What about the best man? Is it Andrew, then? The individual who attended college alongside him? Andy. I revised, a glimmer of hope remaining. They've shared a friendship since their first year in school. Thomas has been rather quiet about him recently. However, Beatrice concluded, Vanessa wouldn't have been able to fully separate Thomas from his oldest friend. Not a member of the wedding party. Could you share his number with me? I certainly did. Somewhere within the pages of my address book. After a desperate search, I located it and dialed with shaking fingers, hoping he hadn't altered his number in the years since our last communication. The call was directed to voicemail. I sent a quick, pressing message requesting that he return my call right away regarding Thomas. In a moment of urgency, with choices dwindling and the clock ticking, I arrived at a conclusion. We are attending the wedding, I declared resolutely, collecting the printed proof. Place it into a folder. Not as visitors, but to put an end to it. Beatrice regarded the situation with a hint of doubt. Access to him will always be out of reach. The venue has security, as you mentioned. Then we'll discover an alternative, I asserted, a mother's resolve surpassing every other thought. I refused to allow that woman to ruin my son's life. As we rushed to the car, the weight of our endeavor struck me with full force. I was on the verge of potentially embarrassing my son on what ought to have been the most joyful day of his life. Despite the evidence, he may still remain unconvinced. He could hold a grudge against me for stepping in. However, the thought of remaining passive while he wed a woman who viewed him merely as a means to an end was simply unacceptable. James often remarked that I was overly protective. I whispered, as Beatrice maneuvered through the morning traffic at speeds that clearly exceeded the legal limit, insisting that I should allow Thomas to learn from his own errors. There are errors, and then there are disasters, Beatrice responded somberly. This clearly belongs in the latter category. Before us lay Oak Ridge Estate, its pristine grounds and graceful facade standing in sharp relief to the inner chaos we bore. Opulent vehicles adorned the parking lot, elegantly dressed attendees gracefully proceeding toward the garden where the ceremony was set to unfold. A wave of dread washed over me as I noticed a uniformed security guard scrutinizing invitations at the entrance. Beatrice parked at the far end of the lot, and we lingered for a moment, crafting our strategy. I finally proposed the service entrance. During my time in nursing, there was always an alternative route for deliveries and staff. Beatrice gave a satisfied nod. Now, you're channeling the Ellie I worked alongside in the ER. Let us proceed. We navigated the edges of the property, striving to appear intentional rather than dubious in our formal attire. At the rear of the main building, we discovered what we had been looking for. A functional entrance where catering staff hurried back and forth, laden with trays and equipment. "Follow my lead," Beatrice whispered, smoothing her dress and adopting the commanding expression she had honed over years of overseeing hospital departments. She walked up to a flustered young man dressed in catering clothes. "Could you please direct us to the groom's suite right away? Ms. Bradford has entrusted us with an important message for Mr. Sullivan." The young man hardly acknowledged our presence, preoccupied with the delicate task of balancing a tray filled with champagne flutes. "Second floor, East Wing. They'll be heading to the ceremony site in just 5 minutes. So please rush." We entered, weaving through the orchestrated frenzy of an upscale wedding as it approached its grand finale. We spotted the signs and swiftly made our way up the stairs, the folder of evidence gripped firmly in my hands. The second-floor hallway exuded a serene stillness, a stark contrast to the bustling energy below. The plush carpet absorbed our footsteps, enveloping us in a hushed atmosphere as we continued our search. A sudden eruption of male laughter led us to a door labeled Groom's Suite. I paused, momentarily frozen by uncertainty. What if he doubts my words? I murmured softly to Beatrice. What if this just drives him further away? Beatrice clasped my hand, with a comforting grip. That's a chance we must embrace. Reality remains reality, Ellie, even when it hurts, particularly when it hurts. I inhaled deeply and rapped decisively on the door. The door creaked open, and there stood Andy, dashing in his tuxedo, yet somehow appearing less vibrant than the spirited young man who once filled our holiday gatherings with laughter. His eyes grew large with disbelief at the sight of me. "Mrs. Sullivan," he breathed, entering the hallway and gently nudging the door, almost shut behind him. "What brings you here? Thomas mentioned that you weren't. Andy, I kindly ask you." I cut in, my voice trembling with urgency. "I must talk to my son right away. This is a matter of urgency." He cast a furtive look behind him, anxiety flickering in his eyes. "This is not an opportune moment. We're about to head down for the ceremony in just a few minutes, and Thomas is already feeling the pressure. It revolves around Vanessa," I stated. "Plainly, she isn't the person he believes her to be. I possess crucial information that he must review to avoid making a significant error." A fleeting expression crossed Andy's face, a hint of uncertainty that suggested he may not be completely taken aback by what I had just said. "Andy," a voice echoed from inside, belonging to Thomas. Who could it be at the door? Just as Andy was about to reply, the door swung wide, revealing my son standing there. The sight of him, strikingly handsome in his tuxedo and reminiscent of his father, nearly left me breathless. For a moment, he just gazed, astonishment written all over his face. "Mother." The word slipped out softly, almost as if it were a figment of his imagination. Then his expression turned steely. "What brings you here? I expressed my feelings about your presence quite explicitly." The chill in his voice pierced through me, yet Rebecca's truths ignited a spark of bravery within. "Thomas, if you could. Only 5 minutes. Before the ceremony, there's an important detail you should be aware of. I only need to understand that. You've prioritized your house above all else. What brings me joy?" He broke. "I never thought you would come here to create a disturbance on my wedding day." "I'm not here to create a disturbance," I insisted, fighting to maintain my composure. "I'm here because my affection for you compels me to speak up." Beatrice advanced with purpose. "Thomas, your mother came across some rather unsettling news this morning. Details regarding Vanessa that you should know." Thomas's face turned crimson with rage. "So, you've come with backup to catch me off guard. This is precisely the reason I preferred your absence. Vanessa has never been given a fair opportunity by you. From the outset, you've opposed her because she perceives your cunning. Thomas." "James Sullivan," I interjected, my mother's voice slicing through his rant. "I have always been truthful with you, and that won't change now. Just 5 minutes, please. If you still wish to proceed with the wedding afterward, I will depart quietly. You won't have to encounter me ever again." There was a weight to my words, a raw honesty in that last vow, that made him stop and think. He checked his watch, then looked at Andy, who responded with a slight nod. 5 minutes, Thomas agreed coldly. He pointed towards a cozy sitting room across the hall, distinct from the groomsmen assembled in the suite. Once I stepped inside and shut the door, I immediately got to work. "Vanessa has had 3 previous engagements," I started as I opened the folder of evidence. "She consistently focused on men whose families possessed considerable wealth, yet faced constraints in liquid assets. With each instance, she skillfully twisted the circumstances to coerce the parents into selling assets or securing loans for lavish weddings. Each time she called off the engagement right before the ceremony, but not without ensuring she had access to joint accounts and assets." Thomas looked at me as though I had begun to utter words from a forgotten language. "That's absurd. That is utterly unbelievable." I longed for it to be true. I murmured gently as I passed him the printouts that Rebecca had sent over. "Here are the messages exchanged between Vanessa and her previous roommate, Rebecca. This one particularly refers to aiming for your mother's charming little home as early as your 3rd date." His hands trembled ever so slightly, as he perused the messages, a battle of disbelief clashing with the undeniable evidence laid out before him. These might not be genuine. Anyone can produce screenshots. "Listen to this," Beatrice said, pulling out my phone and playing the recording of Vanessa's drunken call from the night before. Vanessa's unique voice resonated throughout the cozy space. Another nostalgic individual who may end up solitary in a care facility, while I relish the benefits of her financial decisions. Thomas is far simpler to handle than Daniel ever was, so eager for validation, so conveniently distanced from his mother. The hue faded from Thomas's complexion as the recording played on, Vanessa humorously recounting her scheme to tap into his accounts post-wedding, revealing her need for funds from my house to manage a few financial troubles her fiancé was blissfully unaware of. As the last note faded away, an eerie stillness enveloped the room. Thomas sank into a small settee, the papers quivering in his grasp. "There's more," I remarked softly. "Financial records indicate her termination from the firm 3 months prior, due to falsified client billings, alongside credit card statements revealing over $200,000 in debt. Additionally, there is documentation of previous weddings that never took place, as well as details regarding the properties sold by her former fiancé's parents to fund them." Thomas gazed at the evidence, his face transforming from skepticism to bewilderment to a gradual realization, a chilling experience that shattered my emotions. "She mentioned her promotion," he whispered, as if to no one in particular. "She has been heading to the office each day. She shares with me the correspondence from her clients." His voice faded as he came upon the forged employment records. "She has not been truthful with you, dear," I whispered gently, employing the term of affection I had refrained from uttering for what felt like an eternity. "Concerning her profession, her history, and her aspirations." Thomas glanced up at me, and in that instant I was reminded of my little boy, fragile, wounded, yearning for his mother's embrace. "What is the reason?" he inquired straightforwardly. "What makes me the one?" I positioned myself next to him, mindful, to maintain a respectful distance, aware that he seemed too delicate for any form of physical reassurance. "Rebecca mentions that Vanessa conducts thorough research on potential targets, men who achieve professional success, yet do not possess independent wealth, men who share a strong bond with their parents, particularly when those parents possess property in their own name, individuals who may experience social uncertainty, driven by a desire to gain approval and make a positive impression, and men who feel a distance from a parent," Beatrice remarked softly, revealing a vulnerability she could take advantage of. Thomas recoiled at that, his eyes falling to his hands. "After Dad passed away," he said softly, "I immersed myself in my work, in creating something that would honor him, that would make you proud." "Oh, Thomas," I whispered, my heart shattering. "Your father had already taken great pride in you. I feel the same way, not for your professional accomplishments, but for the essence of your character. Who is it that I am?" he inquired with a sharp edge, motioning toward his tuxedo and the lavish environment around him. Somebody who was prepared to sever ties with his mother for a woman who viewed him merely as a source of financial support. A person so consumed by the pursuit of recognition that he failed to notice the obvious truths before him. I asserted, "You are human. Everyone stumbles at times. The desire for love and a sense of belonging is universal." Vanessa took advantage of that deeply ingrained human desire. A sudden forceful knock at the door broke our conversation. Andy peeked in, his face taut with worry. "Thomas," The crowd is eagerly anticipating your arrival. The officiant informs us that we must begin in 5 minutes, or we risk losing our time. Slot for the garden ceremony." Thomas gazed at the documentation resting in his lap, then turned his eyes to me, uncertainty etched on his face. "What should I do?" he inquired, his voice carrying a youthful tone I hadn't heard from him in ages. "There exists a gathering of 200 individuals beyond this point. Vanessa's family, my co-workers, everyone in our circle. You have choices," Beatrice stated matter-of-factly. "It is possible to delay, referencing an urgent situation. You can proceed with your decision, armed with your understanding, and handle the consequences when they arise. Alternatively, you may choose to conclude it at this moment." Thomas tousled his meticulously arranged hair, a gesture that strikingly echoed his father's mannerisms. "If I delay or proceed, I'm merely extending what is bound to happen, right? Once I grasp this, it becomes an indelible part of my understanding. No." I responded gently. "It's not possible." Another knock, this one more urgent than before. "Thomas!" It was Vanessa's father, his commanding tone clear, even from behind the door. "What's causing the delay? Vanessa is prepared to begin the process." Thomas inhaled deeply, straightening his shoulders in a manner reminiscent of James, causing tears to well up in my eyes. "I must see her," he declared, rising to his feet. "I must meet her gaze when I inquire about this matter." "Is that a prudent choice?" Beatrice inquired, her brow furrowed with worry. She could attempt to charm her way out of it, twisting the circumstances to her advantage. Thomas meticulously collected the evidence, folding each piece with precision and slipping it into the pocket of his jacket. "Perhaps, but I must approach this in my own manner." He faced me, his expression a nuanced blend of suffering, appreciation, and determination. "Thank you for being here today, for not losing faith in me even when I lost faith in you." Before I had a chance to reply, he swung the door open and marched into the hallway, sidestepping Vanessa's surprised father without a word. With a swift, reassuring nod, Andy departed, leaving Beatrice and me in the solitude of the sitting room. "Well," Beatrice remarked after a pause, "that didn't unfold quite as I anticipated." "No," I concurred, my heart pounding. Yet, he listened to us. He had faith in us. That's beyond what I ever imagined possible. "What comes next?" Beatrice inquired. I checked the time on my watch. 10:58. Now we pause and hope he discovers the courage to take the necessary steps. We descended the stairs, steering clear of the bustling areas where guests congregated. From my vantage point, the garden ceremony site unfolded before me, with neat rows of white chairs embellished by opulent floral displays, a flower-draped arch ready for the exchange of vows, and musicians standing by, instruments in hand, endless costs, grand displays, all constructed upon a bedrock of deception. The sharp echo of raised voices beckoned us toward a side corridor. Thomas and Vanessa stood opposite one another in what seemed to be a modest antechamber. The door is slightly open. She radiated elegance in a designer gown that likely exceeded the value of my yearly pension. Her expression blended confusion with a growing sense of alarm as Thomas spoke. He faced away from us. Beatrice and I were unable to catch the words, yet we could clearly observe Vanessa's expressions, transforming a face. Initially, there was disbelief, followed by a surge of defensive anger, and then a chilling calmness that crept in, sending shivers down my spine even from afar. She extended her hand to Thomas, resting it on his arm, her expression transforming into one that conveyed a deep sense of concern. I observed her lips moving, shaping words that appeared to be denials, explanations, or maybe even accusations, directed at me. Thomas shook his head, gently pulling her hand away from his arm, then reached into his pocket and pulled out the papers. Vanessa's poise wavered as he presented them to her, piece by piece. From our perspective, I could perceive the instant when clarity emerged, the moment she recognized that her plan had been unveiled, that this particular target would not succumb to manipulation as effortlessly as the previous ones. Her metamorphosis was astonishing. The elegant, composed woman who once regarded my humble abode and unpretentious existence disappeared, giving way to a figure whose expression twisted with rage. With a swift motion, she lunged for the papers in Thomas's grasp, tearing a few apart before he had the chance to retreat. Her voice lifted, becoming clear enough for us to hear. "You unappreciative, pitiful individual. Are you aware of what you're discarding? Who do you believe would desire you in my absence? You're just a minor architect from an obscure place, with your modest firm and your unremarkable aspirations." Thomas remained motionless, taking in the barrage of words with a serenity that hinted at a fresh understanding. As she took a moment to catch her breath, his reply was barely audible, yet it sent a jolt through Vanessa. His words struck her like a blow, causing her to pull back in shock. For a brief instant they remained frozen in a scene, Thomas upright and determined, while Vanessa quivered with suppressed fury. Then she surprised me with an action that was completely at odds with the refined, composed persona I believed I understood. With a swift motion, she seized a crystal vase from the table and sent it crashing against the wall next to Thomas's head. The crash sent several wedding staff rushing. "Over!" Vanessa marched by, pushing aside a woman in a coordinator's headset who looked worried. She glided down the corridor, the train of her exquisite gown trailing behind her like a tempestuous shadow. Thomas lingered in the antechamber, his back turned to us, shoulders slightly hunched as though a heavy burden had been removed, yet the remnants of its pressure lingered like bruises. After a brief pause, Andy joined him, uttering words that prompted Thomas to nod in affirmation. "Should we approach him?" Beatrice murmured, her gaze fixed on the unfolding drama, her eyes wide with wonder. I gently shook my head. "Not at this moment. He requires a moment." Andy led Thomas to another door, likely to provide him with some privacy from the increasing crowd of staff and inquisitive guests attracted by the disturbance. I caught sight of my son's profile as he turned, pale yet composed, his jaw clenched in the same resolute expression James had displayed when confronting harsh realities. "What comes next?" Beatrice inquired as we observed them fade from sight. "I'm not sure," I confessed, "but no matter what it is, I'll stand by him, if he wishes for my presence." Before Beatrice had a chance to reply, Vanessa's father emerged at the far end of the corridor, his expression stormy as he took in the shattered glass and bewildered staff. His gaze fixed on me, sharpening with a mix of recognition and instant animosity. "You," he said, moving closer with a barely concealed rage. "This is a result of your actions. You just couldn't bear to witness your son's joy, could you? You felt the need to turn him against Vanessa, driven by envy of her vitality, her achievements, and her position in his world." I aligned my posture, locking eyes with him unwaveringly. "Mr. Bradford, I see that you're feeling frustrated, but it might be wise to have a conversation with your daughter before jumping to conclusions." My daughter is devastated, tears streaming down her face, as your son abruptly called off the wedding just moments before the ceremony. He shouted, his face turning an alarming shade of red. "Can you even fathom the embarrassment, the cost involved? There are 200 guests present. I apologize for the inconvenience. I responded, maintaining a composed tone. However, my primary concern lies in the observation that your daughter seems to have a recurring tendency to pursue relationships with men for monetary benefits, ending engagements after families have divested their resources and departing with significant amounts that are never reimbursed. My straightforward remark left him speechless. His expression changed slightly. A brief glimpse of something. Awareness, worry, flitting across his face before it solidified once more into anger. That is utterly ridiculous. That constitutes defamation. I might take legal action against you for... You could? Beatrice interjected with a graceful ease. However, all the evidence would then be included in the public record, encompassing the recordings, text messages, and documentation of prior engagements and financial transactions. Is that truly a gamble you're willing to embrace, Mr. Bradford? The suggestion lingered in the atmosphere surrounding us. After a prolonged pause, he took a step back, adjusting his tie in a manner that appeared more about stalling than about perfecting his look. I'm not sure what game you're engaging in, he remarked, his tone now measured, nearly conciliatory. Yet this is far from the end. Vanessa and Thomas recently experienced a miscommunication. It's common for couples to have disagreements leading up to the wedding. It's just the usual nerves before the ceremony. His effort to downplay what had just happened would have been nearly humorous if it weren't so profoundly tragic. I pondered the countless occasions he must have crafted similar justifications for his daughter, reflecting on the numerous warning signs he had overlooked or rationalized. Mr. Bradford? I spoke, softly. It's clear to both of us that this goes beyond mere nerves. Your daughter requires support, not indulgence. My son is entitled to the truth. Before he had a chance to reply, Andy emerged once more at the corridor's end, his gaze sweeping the surroundings until it landed on me. He rushed over, deliberately overlooking Mr. Bradford. "Mrs. Sullivan," he remarked, a hint of breathlessness in his voice. "Thomas is looking for you. He can be found in the library located on the east side of the building." He cast a fleeting look at the shattered glass, the suspended staff, and Mr. Bradford's stormy demeanor. "This morning has been rather eventful." "Thank you, Andy," I said, extending my hand to grasp his arm in appreciation for all things, as Beatrice and I trailed behind Andy on our way to the library, leaving Mr. Bradford amidst the remnants of his daughter's latest endeavor. I experienced an intriguing blend of sadness and liberation. The wedding that had occupied my mind for months was now irrevocably called off. But what toll would this take on my son's heart and pride? Thomas had sidestepped a calamitous union, yet now confronted the embarrassment of elucidating to 200 attendees why the ceremony would not take place. Yet beneath these concerns flowed a stream of careful optimism. Thomas requested my presence. Following a long stretch of quiet and disappointment, my son sought the comfort of his mother as he faced the challenges that came after the betrayal. It marked the start of something new, fragile, delicate, yet authentic. At the threshold of the library, I hesitated, summoning my resolve. No matter what challenges awaited us, awkward discussions with guests, possible clashes with Vanessa's family, the arduous journey of Thomas regaining his trust in others and himself, we would confront it side by side. "Are you prepared?" Beatrice inquired gently. I nodded, adjusting the pearl necklace she had lent me just hours before, in a different time when I had intended merely to observe my son's wedding from afar. "Prepared," I affirmed, and stepped through the door to embrace whatever awaited me. The library at Oak Ridge Estate exuded a serene sophistication, with walls adorned by leather-bound volumes, plush leather seating, and expansive windows that flooded the space with warm, natural illumination. Thomas positioned himself with his back to one of the windows, his outline highlighted by the vibrant spring day beyond. He had taken off his bow tie and jacket, and in this slight state of disarray, he appeared more like his true self than he had in months. As he turned at the sound of the door creaking open, I noticed the unmistakable traces of tears glistening on his cheeks. Without hesitation, I spread my arms wide, and he closed the distance in 3 swift strides to envelop me in his embrace. For a moment, we simply embraced, the first touch we had shared since the conflict that had fractured our bond half a year prior. "I'm truly sorry, Mom," he murmured, his voice thick with feeling. "I uttered awful words to you, words that cannot be forgiven. There's nothing my son could do that I wouldn't forgive," I said softly, running my fingers through his hair just as I did when he was a small child, trembling at the sound of thunder. Silence. He withdrew, using the heel of his hand to wipe away his tears in a movement that echoed his childhood, tightening my heart. "What led you to that conclusion? What can you tell me about Vanessa?" I detailed Rebecca's call, observing Thomas's face transform through disbelief, anger, and a sorrowful acceptance as I shared the intricacies of Vanessa's previous plots. 200 people, he finally uttered, shaking his head in disbelief. 200 individuals gathered, anticipating a wedding that will never take place. Associates, customers, companions. "They will comprehend," Beatrice suggested from her serene spot in one of the library chairs. "A challenging conversation is preferable to a catastrophic union." Thomas offered a faint smile. "Always the voice of reason you are. Someone needs to be by your side, Sullivans, with all your flair for the dramatic," she said with warmth. Andy rapped lightly on the door before stepping inside, a tray in hand that showcased an elegant silver coffee service. He placed it gently on the mahogany side table, suggesting that it might be beneficial for everyone. I thought it would be an improvement over the champagne they keep insisting on serving. As he poured, a sudden burst of commotion in the corridor. Outside drew our focus, shouting echoes, rapid strides, the crackle of communication devices. The wedding coordinator made her entrance at the door. Her professional demeanor was clearly under pressure. "Mr. Sullivan," she started with a hint of uncertainty. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but the circumstances are becoming increasingly challenging to handle. Ms. Bradford has, quite theatrically, made her exit in the bridal car. Her parents are conversing with the guests, indicating that there has been a delay caused by a medical emergency related to you." She hesitated gently. "Is that the story you would like us to endorse?" Thomas gazed at her with an empty expression. "Urgent health situation? Mr. Bradford mentioned that you experienced a panic attack," Andy said, his face a mix of worry and a hint of humor. "It seems you are currently under sedation and taking some time to rest, leading to the decision to reschedule the wedding." "That's absurd," Thomas said, straightening up with indignation. "I am definitely not under sedation or experiencing a medical emergency. It's a delicate fabrication," I proposed softly. "For them just as much as for you." He pondered for a moment, then firmly shook his head. "No, I refuse to embark on the next chapter of my life with a falsehood, no matter how convenient it may seem." He glanced over at the coordinator. "I sincerely apologize to the guests for any inconvenience caused, but regarding the wedding, it has been called off, not postponed, but cancelled. If they would like, they are more than welcome to join us for the meal, as it has already been taken care of. I will deliver a concise statement in," he checked his watch, 15 minutes, in the main hall. The coordinator nodded, visibly relieved to receive straightforward guidance. "Absolutely. I'll take care of that right away." Once she departed, Thomas settled into a chair, holding his coffee cup as though it were a lifeline. "I'm at a loss for words with them, honestly," I said plainly. "Not every agonizing detail, but the core reality." He nodded slowly, acknowledging that you've discovered aspects of your relationship that render marriage unfeasible. What comes next? What comes next? I am unable to return to my apartment. Vanessa possesses a key, and a significant portion of her possessions resides there. "You will come home with me," I declared confidently. "As long as it takes." "Home," he echoed, a universe of significance in that one sound. I found myself questioning whether I still possessed it, given all that I had expressed. "You will forever find a place of belonging with me, Thomas. Without fail." The following quarter of an hour unfolded in serene anticipation. Thomas penned concise notes on the library stationery, while I assisted him in tidying up his look, adjusting his collar and smoothing his hair, just as I had done for numerous school, photos and job interviews in the past. Andy departed to locate the remaining groomsmen and clarify the circumstances. Beatrice ventured outside to contact a locksmith friend who had kindly agreed to meet us at Thomas's apartment, later to change the locks, a measure that felt wise considering Vanessa's unpredictable response. When the moment arrived, Thomas squared his shoulders and guided us from the library to the main hall where the reception was set to take place. The room buzzed with bewildered guests dressed in formal wear, their whispered exchanges forming a tense atmosphere that quieted abruptly when Thomas entered. He strode to the center of the room, his posture upright and dignified, even as the strain in his face was unmistakable. I stayed at the rear with Beatrice, filled with an indescribable pride for my son's bravery. "Esteemed guests, dear friends, and valued colleagues," Thomas commenced, his voice imbued with the authority of an architect, resonating through the quiet atmosphere. "I would like to express my gratitude to everyone for being here today, and I must also extend my heartfelt apologies for the unusual circumstances we find ourselves in. Today, the wedding ceremony will not take place. This morning I received crucial information that led me to the tough, yet essential choice to conclude my relationship with Vanessa." A soft whisper spread among the gathering. Thomas lifted a hand to silence it. "I will refrain from disclosing specific details to honor the privacy of both myself and Vanessa. I have come to realize that there are deep-seated incompatibilities and violations of trust that render a marriage between us unfeasible." He halted, inhaling deeply. "The team will be providing the reception meal for those who choose to remain. I hope you see this as a token of my gratitude for your patience in this uncomfortable circumstance. I fully understand and sincerely apologize for any inconvenience for those who choose to depart," he concluded with impressive calmness, yet I could perceive the toll reflected in the tension around his eyes. As he took a step back, a wave of encouraging applause resonated throughout the room. As I began, I felt a wave of appreciation from Andy and the other groomsmen. A number of guests greeted Thomas with firm handshakes and encouraging remarks, while some quietly slipped away. Vanessa's parents were conspicuously missing, having seemingly left with or soon after their daughter almost. 2 hours had passed by the time we finally departed from Oak Ridge Estate. Thomas was determined to express his gratitude to the staff and vendors who had navigated the tumultuous circumstances with remarkable professionalism. He exchanged a few words with each guest as they left, graciously accepting their kind wishes and handling their inquisitiveness with poise. As we arrived at the parking lot, fatigue was palpable in every contour of his form. He settled into the back seat of Beatrice's car quietly, resting his head against the window as we departed from what was meant to be the site of his wedding day. "Are you managing okay?" I inquired gently, extending my hand to make contact with his. He acknowledged with a silent nod, his eyes remaining closed. Feeling a bit worn out, and... He paused. Feeling a bit shy? Embarrassed? I was utterly deceived. Vanessa is skilled in the art of deception, he reminded himself, and she chose you deliberately for traits that are, in truth, admirable. Your kindness, your passion for nurturing those around you, your ability to love and trust. I didn't show you much generosity or love, he admitted, finally meeting my gaze. I selected her without a moment's doubt. I warned you that I would remove you from my life if you didn't sell your home. Who treats their mother that way? From the driver's seat, Beatrice interjected, revealing the artful manipulation at play. I've encountered it previously with my patients, Thomas. Manipulative individuals cut off their victims from those who could potentially unveil the deception. They fabricate misleading options, conflict between opposing sides. It's not on you. It seems like I'm to blame, he murmured, softly. I ought to have recognized it for what it was. You ought to have wondered why she was so obsessed with your house, Mom. I should have recognized how she quietly worked to erode my connection with you from the start. Looking back provides a perspective that eludes us in the present, I remarked. What is important at this moment is to progress ahead. The rest of the journey unfolded in thoughtful quietude. As the well-known streets took the place of the highway, I sensed a subtle easing of tension from Thomas beside me. As we made the turn onto Maple Street, he straightened in his seat, surveying the neighborhood with a fresh perspective, or maybe a familiar one, as he reconnected with the serene charm of the street from his childhood. Mrs. Peterson stood in her front yard as we arrived in my driveway. She waved, then did a double-take at the sight of Thomas, stepping out of the car in his wedding attire, sans jacket and tie. Is today not the day? She started, her voice tinged with uncertainty. A tale of great length awaits us, Helen, Beatrice exclaimed with a bright smile. Thomas is going to be residing with Eleanor for some time. Would you be able to bring some of that delightful banana bread over tomorrow? Mrs. Peterson, with her kind spirit, noticed Dow. The signal right away. Absolutely, I would be thrilled. Greetings, Thomas. You've returned. It's been a while since we last saw you, and your presence has certainly been missed. Within the confines of the house, Thomas lingered in the entryway, surveying his surroundings as though experiencing them anew. He focused on the height markings, etched into the kitchen doorframe, the family photos adorning the wall, and the slightly askew bookshelf that he and his father had crafted together. It's precisely the same, he whispered. In light of all that has transpired, considering the way I conducted myself, no alterations were made at all. What would be the reason for me to do that? I inquired straightforwardly. This is where we belong. Your father, mine and yours as well, without fail. He ascended the stairs to shed his wedding attire and wash away the day's emotional remnants. Beatrice assisted me in crafting a straightforward dish, a nostalgic comfort food from Thomas's early years. Chicken and dumplings, a cherished favorite since his first encounters with solid meals. You're truly an extraordinary woman, Eleanor. Sullivan! Beatrice remarked while slicing carrots at the kitchen counter. Considering all that he expressed to you and the way he behaved towards you, here you are, preparing his beloved dish and embracing his return with open arms. That's the essence of motherhood, I responded, even as the praise filled me with warmth. Affection doesn't tally points. Nevertheless, she maintained that numerous individuals would likely harbor some resentment and seek at least a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I shrugged, working the dough for the dumplings. What would be the purpose? He's in enough pain already. Moreover, he did express his regret, and I trust him. Patience will bring everything else in due course. As the evening unfolded, with Beatrice having returned to her abode, and Thomas and I enjoying a serene dinner, we found ourselves side by side on the gentle sway of the back porch swing. The garden exuded tranquility in the twilight, with the azaleas glowing softly in the diminishing light. For an extended period, we swayed in comfortable quietude, the gentle creaking of the chains providing a calming contrast to the tumult of the day. Finally, Thomas revealed, "I spoke to Rebecca. As you arranged the table, she reached out to see if I was doing okay. Her consideration was truly admirable." He gave a slight nod. "She mentioned that Vanessa has a history of this, not only with the engagements and financial plots, but also with the ruthless character attacks that follow. It seems that her former fiancé faced a barrage of rumors concerning infidelity, mental instability, and even allegations of criminal behavior. Do you have concerns that she might attempt that with you?" I inquired with a hint of worry. "Let her try," he declared, his voice carrying an unexpected firmness. "I possess the proof that Rebecca supplied, along with records of her financial misdeeds, and unlike her former victims, I am determined to stand my ground and not retreat into shameful silence. I observed my son in the encroaching shadows, taking in the resolve etched in his features. It seemed that Vanessa had unwittingly bestowed upon him a precious gift, a renewed sense of strength and a sharper awareness of his own limits and value. Text, I gently remarked that your father would be proud of how you managed today, facing the crowd and owning up to the truth when it would have been easy to retreat into a comfortable falsehood." Thomas remained silent for such an extended period that I began to wonder if he would ever reply. As he spoke, his voice trembled with deep feeling. While changing, I discovered my father's journal tucked away in my jacket pocket. I have no recollection of placing it there. A smile crept across my face in the shadows. I might have included it this morning before the events. Unfolded, I considered that you could benefit from his insight today, regardless of what happened at the wedding. Indeed, Thomas acknowledged. I came across his final entry while you were busy in the kitchen, the one where he expressed concern over my aspirations and whether I would grasp what is genuinely important in life. In the shadows, he extended his hand toward mine. It seems I am beginning to grasp the essence of what he conveyed, as well as the lessons you both endeavored to impart to me. "What is that?" I inquired, gently squeezing his fingers. "A life constructed solely on facades is devoid of true essence. True wealth is not defined by the size of your home or material possessions, but rather by the connections that nurture and support you." He surveyed the unassuming garden, the quaint porch, the simple dwelling that stood behind us. In finding a place and a person to return to when the world unravels. I fought to hold back tears, leaning my head against his shoulder as we swayed softly in the shadows. The future was shrouded in ambiguity. Thomas faced the daunting task of reconstructing his life, regaining his apartment, and potentially confronting the professional and social repercussions of the cancelled wedding. Challenging days lie in wait. In this moment, we uncovered something invaluable amidst the ruins of what could have been a second chance for the relationship that Vanessa had almost shattered. A path back for a son who had strayed from his course. The phone call that transformed everything this morning did more than rescue Thomas from a calamitous union. It had brought a mother and son back together, a reunion that held far greater significance than any wedding ever could. As the initial stars emerged in the deepening twilight, I quietly vowed to myself and to the memory of James. This time I would ensure Thomas grasped the essence of his true inheritance, not merely a property to be sold or assets to be converted into cash, but the lasting legacy of being cherished without conditions, just as he is. That was a treasure beyond anyone's reach, impervious to manipulation, exploitation, or theft. The tranquil refuge that Thomas and I discovered that evening on the porch swing turned out to be just the calm before the chaos. The ensuing week unfolded like a tempest, filled with challenges, clashes, and unforeseen truths that put our freshly mended bond to the ultimate test. The initial challenge presented itself the next morning. Thomas had just descended the stairs, lured by the enticing scent of pancakes, a nostalgic comfort from his youth, when his phone began to ring. The screen showcased the name of his law firm, and a wave of unease washed over his features. "Hello," he replied, his polished tone taking shape even as his underlying anxiety lingered. I occupied myself at the stove, striving to grant him the space he required while staying nearby to provide assistance if necessary. The lopsided dialogue I caught. "Wind of was concerning. Absolutely. I comprehend. Naturally, it's surprising. I believe that isn't fair in the slightest, I understand. Could I possibly come in to talk about this face to face?" "Thank you for that, Gerald. Thanks a lot." After the call ended, Thomas remained frozen in the center of the kitchen, his face a mask of disbelief. "What transpired?" I inquired softly, switching off the burner and stepping closer to him. That was Gerald Hoffman, the esteemed senior partner. Thomas's voice echoed with a sense of remoteness, lacking connection. "Last night, Vanessa received a call from her father. It seems that the Bradford family holds a prominent position among the firm's key clients. A detail Vanessa never brought to my attention. A sense of dread coiled within me. What was their response? They've asked me to take a leave of absence until, and I quote, this unfortunate personal situation resolves itself. The sharpness in his laugh carried no trace of amusement. To put it differently, I'm being pushed to the sidelines until the Bradfords make their decision about whether to continue their business with us. I led him to a chair, placing a mug of coffee in front of him. Is that something they can accomplish? It appears profoundly unjust. They can do whatever they wish, Thomas remarked, gazing into the coffee as though it held the solutions he sought. I'm not losing my job, at least not at this moment. But I'm essentially being sidelined. My existing clients will be transferred to other team members. Is it because you won't marry a woman who deceived you? That's utterly ridiculous. Thomas sipped his coffee, wincing at its sharp bitterness. Office dynamics seldom reflect equity, Mom, particularly when substantial client revenues are involved. Seeing his shoulders droop under this latest setback, my urge to shield him intensified. It's essential to seek your own legal counsel. This seems like an act of revenge. Legally speaking, they have the right to do so, but Gerald has at least consented to meet with me tomorrow. He offered a feeble smile. Perhaps I can extract some value from the professional chaos that Vanessa has created. That afternoon, as Thomas headed to his apartment with Andy and the locksmith to ensure his home was secure and gather important items, an unexpected visitor arrived at my door. The doorbell chimed shortly after 2, unveiling a slender woman in her early 30s. With her auburn hair secured in a tidy ponytail, she wore an expression that blended nervousness with determination. "Madam Sullivan, my name is Rebecca Martin." She reached out her hand with caution. "I trust it's all right that I stopped by. I wanted to see how Thomas is faring and to extend my apologies to you face to face." I welcomed her in, observing the woman whose call had transformed everything. In her presence, Rebecca emanated a subtle assurance laced with palpable remorse. As we nestled into the living room with our cups of tea, she appeared hesitant to meet my gaze directly. "I should have come forward sooner," she began, her fingers anxiously tracing the rim of her teacup. "Had I found my voice earlier, perhaps Thomas could have avoided this public embarrassment. When it truly counted, you found your voice," I reassured her. "That required bravery." Rebecca gave a slight shake of her head. Not bravery, but a delayed sense of morality. "I played a part in Vanessa's schemes for far too long, crafting excuses and turning a blind eye. By the time I understood the extent of her destructiveness, she had already gained significant leverage over both my professional and personal life." As Rebecca delved deeper into her past with Vanessa, an unsettling pattern began to surface. Vanessa Bradford exhibited a level of calculation that surpassed what the evidence had indicated. She nurtured connections with individuals who could be advantageous, kept thorough records on prospective targets and their families, and utilized a web of collaborators reminiscent of Rebecca's former role to assist in carrying out her plans. Rebecca elaborated that it's not solely about the financial aspect. Vanessa relishes the power, the influence. Dismantling family connections brings her a unique sense of fulfillment. She perceives love and loyalty as vulnerabilities to manipulate, rather than virtues to honor. "What's the process? Have you liberated yourself from her sway?" I inquired. Rebecca's demeanor shifted to one of gloom. After she orchestrated their breakup, her former fiancé, Daniel, made an attempt on his life. I discovered him first. She took a deep breath. In a way, that served as my awakening. I came to the understanding that I could no longer be a part of harming others, even in a passive manner. The truth lingered in the air, thick and palpable. Thomas had barely evaded not only financial exploitation, but also the possibility of severe emotional trauma. "Have you had a conversation with the other families? Is it Michael's and Daniel's?" I inquired. Rebecca gave a slight nod. "I have been working on reconciliation. Michael has transformed his life, even as his parents were compelled to part with their cabin to settle debts. Is that you, Daniel?" She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Daniel continues to face challenges. The weight of shame bore down on him heavily. He returned to live with his mother, seldom stepping outside. Just as we were about to proceed, the front door swung open, revealing Thomas, who was laden with several suitcases. His eyes grew large at the unexpected sight of Rebecca in our living room. "Is that you, Rebecca? What brings you here?" She stood uncomfortably. "I was curious about how you've been managing lately. Be advised, Vanessa is not the type to just turn and leave. Given her tendencies, she will likely seek to respond in some way." Thomas placed his bags on the ground, letting out a tired sigh. "She has indeed. I find myself effectively sidelined from my firm due to the sway of her father. That's merely the start," Rebecca remarked with a somber tone. "Take a moment to review your social media and email. She will be crafting the story with precision." Thomas retrieved his phone, a frown creasing his brow as he navigated through the barrage of notifications. His complexion drained noticeably. "She has shared on all platforms, claiming I experienced a mental breakdown at the wedding, stating that she is praying for my recovery and offering her support during this challenging period." He pressed on with the reading, his demeanor growing more intense. "She subtly suggests that I've been battling substance abuse problems that I have concealed from her. That's so typical of Vanessa," Rebecca remarked. "She presents herself as the caring, understanding companion, all the while undermining your standing. There's more, Thomas said, his voice strained with suppressed fury. Messages to my co-workers, clients, and even former classmates, all conveying her profound worry regarding my increasingly unpredictable actions as the wedding approached. I shifted closer to him, glancing at the words on the page he was focused on. The messages were skillfully composed, appearing empathetic on the surface, while subtly sowing destructive seeds of uncertainty regarding Thomas's mental health and professional abilities. Rebecca explained that she is attempting to make it so that when you reveal the real reason for calling off the wedding, no one will take you seriously. She is eroding your trustworthiness before you have the chance to affect hers. Thomas collapsed onto the couch, engulfed by this fresh wave of turmoil. What strategies can I use to overcome this challenge? When I stand up for myself, it may come across as defensive and unsteady. If I remain silent, her story becomes the truth. Rebecca positioned herself next to him, her demeanor earnest yet resolute. You confront it with honesty, records, testimonies, the very proof that led you to uncover her deceit. She hesitated. You're not by yourself in this. I have been in communication with Michael and Daniel. They are ready to step up now to support the established pattern, the prospect of companions, fellow sufferers who truly grasped what Thomas was enduring, clearly bolstered his determination. We require a plan, he stated, a flicker of his professional assurance re-emerging. Thoughtful, deliberate replies, legal implications, risk management. As the conversation unfolded, I quietly made my way to the kitchen to allow them some privacy. Through the doorway, I observed my son, just shy of 48 hours since his wedding was called off, already mustering the courage to confront this new obstacle. He stood taller, his voice more confident as he and Rebecca discussed possible strategies. Once more the doorbell chimed, breaking the flow of their strategic discussion. As I opened the door, I found Andy on the porch, holding a few more of Thomas's things, his face etched with concern. "Mrs. Sullivan, you must take a look at this," he said, passing me a local newspaper. The society page showcased a prominent photograph of Thomas and Vanessa from their engagement party, accompanied by a headline that sent chills down my spine. Designers break apart, disrupt the societal wedding, concerns within the family regarding mental well-being. It's available in the online edition as well, Andy remarked with a somber tone. Responses are pouring in, with some individuals asserting they always sensed something unusual about Thomas, while others are conveying their condolences. To Vanessa, I brought the newspaper to Thomas, and his expression grew stern as he absorbed the words of the article. The narrative was evidently drawn solely from the Bradford family perspective, depicting Thomas as erratic and Vanessa as the devoted fiancée caught off guard by his collapse. The managing partner of your firm is quoted as I observed, highlighting a section where Gerald Hoffman conveyed his support during this challenging period and referenced Thomas's leave of absence to prioritize health issues. The piece wrapped up with a quote attributed to Thomas, though he had never actually uttered those words, conveying remorse for any distress inflicted upon the Bradford family and requesting solitude during this difficult personal period. "There, quoting me without my permission!" Thomas exclaimed, disbelief evident in his voice. "That constitutes libel." I did not express any of this. Rebecca's expression was serious yet devoid of shock. It seems Vanessa may have persuaded the reporter that she had your approval. She has a history of addressing her former fiancé in the media, shaping the public story to her advantage. Thomas rose to his feet, moving about the living room with a fresh burst of vigor. "This concludes here. I refuse to be portrayed as mentally unstable or addicted to substances just to safeguard Vanessa's image. What will you be doing?" I inquired, a mix of worry and admiration for his resolve evident in my voice. He glanced over at Rebecca. You mentioned that Michael and Daniel would be open to stepping forward to share their stories. She gave a slight nod. As evening drew near, our humble living room morphed into an unexpected command center. Andy arrived with his laptop and media connections from his public relations position. Beatrice came in with dinner, bringing along her pragmatic viewpoint. Rebecca organized video calls with Michael and Daniel, who participated in our planning session from a distance. Two men whose lives had been irrevocably altered by the same woman who had come perilously close to shattering Thomas's existence. As I observed these unfamiliar faces coming together for my son, a whirlwind of feelings surged within me. Thankfulness for their solidarity, anger at Vanessa's actions that affected them all, and deep pride in Thomas's unwavering determination to stand tall and speak his truth. As the planning session drew to a close in the quiet hours past midnight, our kitchen table became a chaotic canvas of notes, timelines, and strategic documents. Thomas crafted a public statement with Andy's assistance, arranged meetings with his firm's partners, and collaborated with Michael and Daniel to unveil concurrent narratives regarding Vanessa's behavioral patterns. It's going to get worse before it gets better, Rebecca cautioned as everyone readied themselves to depart. Vanessa will intensify her efforts when she notices you're pushing back. Thomas nodded, fatigue etched on his features, yet his resolve remained unshaken. Allow her to do so. I refuse to be swayed any longer, whether by her influence or by the anxiety of others' opinions. Once our guests had left and we found ourselves alone again, Thomas assisted me in clearing the dinner dishes, navigating the well-known kitchen with the fluidity of practiced routine. He spoke softly, expressing regret that this situation had unfolded in your home. It was never my intention to introduce this level of turmoil into your existence. I washed a plate, selecting my words with precision. Do you recall what your father often mentioned regarding storms? A subtle smile graced the lips, Thomas's lips. It's not about steering clear of them. It's about having a secure place to come, back to when they strike. Precisely. I grasped his hand, still moist from the soapy water. That's the essence of home, Thomas. It's more than just a structure. I'm truly grateful I held on to it, as it's a sanctuary where love surrounds you without conditions, particularly in turbulent times. As I got ready for bed, I noticed Thomas in the guest room, his temporary space, softly conversing on the phone. His voice echoed down the hallway, firm and unmistakable. I appreciate your concerns, Gerald. However, I refuse to engage in a narrative regarding my mental health that serves to safeguard Vanessa Bradford's reputation or her family's enterprise. No, I'm not acting out of spite. Indeed, I possess records of all the claims I'm making. I understand the challenging situation the firm is in, yet my professional reputation hangs in the balance. Looking forward to our meeting at 9 tomorrow. As the call concluded, I quietly expressed my gratitude to Rebecca for her bravery in making that pivotal phone call on the wedding day. Had she not stepped in, Thomas could very well be tied to a woman who viewed him merely as a tool for her ambitions, yet another trophy in her series of strategic manipulations, TT. The journey ahead promises to be challenging. Vanessa's smear campaign was picking up momentum. The impact of the Bradford family reached into the social and professional realms that Thomas depended upon. His career teetered on a knife's edge. Yet somehow, witnessing my son confront these challenges with fresh insight and determination filled me with a sense of hope I hadn't experienced in months. Thomas had unearthed a fundamental truth about himself through the trials of this difficult experience. A robust character, an unwavering dedication to honesty, an understanding of what genuinely holds significance. As I slipped into slumber, it struck me that, in her attempts to undermine him, Vanessa might have unwittingly aided Thomas in rediscovering his essence, reconnecting with his principles, his genuine companions, his family, and perhaps most crucially, his authentic voice. Tomorrow shall unveil fresh challenges. Yet this evening my son was present, embracing his authenticity, and that alone felt like a triumph for the moment. Half a year after the wedding that never was, autumn brushed my garden with hues of amber and gold, while Thomas and I savored our morning coffee on the porch swing. At times it seems like it belongs to a different era, Thomas observed. At other moments, such as yesterday, a great deal had transformed. Following the smear campaign orchestrated by Vanessa that led to his job loss, Thomas channeled his architectural talents into developing affordable housing initiatives. The job offered a lower salary, yet it brought him a sense of satisfaction that his former profession never could. Rebecca had taken the initiative to facilitate a support group for those affected by relationship fraud. Vanessa departed the city following the investigation into her father's firm. Mom, we have it. Thomas stormed into the room that afternoon, brandishing the approval documents for his community housing project with enthusiasm. Complete financing, prompt timeline endorsement. That weekend, our backyard was alive with the presence of those who had come together to support Thomas in his rebuilding efforts. Rebecca, Michael, Daniel, Andy, Beatrice, and Emma, the urban planner whose relationship with Thomas was tentatively evolving into something deeper. With a raised glass, as golden light danced through the shifting leaves, Thomas proposed a toast to unforeseen adventures, to the phone calls that alter our paths, and above all, to those who help us rediscover our true selves when we lose sight of them. The wedding from which he had been excluded never took place. Instead, something profoundly significant had risen from its remnants, a path of rediscovery, atonement, and rejuvenation. Coming up, there are 2 more remarkable tales displayed for you to enjoy. If this one resonates, you won't want to miss out on these. Simply click and explore them. Be sure to subscribe and activate the notification bell to stay updated on all our uploads.